Hello, everybody. Thanks again for joining me this evening. This evening, I'm going to be looking at anger. Not sure if I've done this before. I thought it might be something worth looking at. Looking at anger, looking at what fuels our anger, the things that can trigger our anger. Looking also, if you think of it like a secondary emotion, again, what drives it, what brings it up in us. Looking at how to understand it so that we can regulate it. Maybe we can use it a bit more constructively and just manage our anger a little bit better. But first of all, I would like to say anger is one of those things that, as a counselor, as a therapist, sometimes people come and they might present with anger issues. It's not necessarily that they have anger issues. It's maybe about how they express it. It's how they communicate it. Other times, someone might be in a situation, an environment, or a relationship, and they've been led to believe that there's something wrong with them being angry. They're a bad person for being angry, because we hear things like, take that look off your face. Don't you dare answer me back. Things like that. When in reality, anger is a normal emotion. It's something normal. It can be healthy. It's our way of telling ourselves something's not right, something's not good. Anger is what we feel whenever we feel a sense of unfairness. Something's not good enough. Something has to change. Something isn't right. But as I said a moment ago about thinking of it like a secondary emotion, anger can be feeling something we really don't want to feel. And it comes out as anger. It drives an anger in us. Now, the example I often use is you would never hear anybody swearing at you, pointing their finger in your face or banging their fist on a desk and screaming at you, how dare you, I feel humiliated. But you will see them do those things, swear at you, big purple face on them and pointing at you and say, don't you ever fucking dare talk to me like that again in front of anybody. So anger is something we really don't want to feel, and it's fueled by hurt, fear. Sometimes it can be shame, sadness. There's some kind of pain. Sometimes it can be feeling helpless. It can be feeling frustrated. Anger could be feeling threatened. Anger could be expectations not met, either our own or someone else's. Anger could be, and I never say this to trivialize it, but sometimes anger is, you're not seeing me the way I see me, or you're not seeing this the way I see it. And sometimes, as I said, we're led to believe anger is a bad thing. It can be when it comes out like a temper tantrum, when it comes out as rage, when it comes out as aggression. It's not so healthy then. It can be quite destructive. And one of the things I'm going to look at later on are the different anger styles. But when we get a sense of what it is fueling our anger and what it is maybe brought the anger up in us, as I say, we can regulate it, we can use it much more constructively. The anger can give us an incentive, if you will. It can give us an energy, that energy that we feel, that restless energy that sometimes we raise our voice and things like that. That energy can be used much more constructively to change things. So just going to begin by looking at some of the different anger styles. I have a list of them here in front of me because my brain's not going to remember them all. So I just get a quick drink. So you can split anger into different types. There are people who explode and there are people who implode. And there's different types in between. But explosive anger, as I say, that comes out as a rage, comes out as a temper tantrum sometimes. Those that have been on my channel, that watch my channel, follow my channel, a lot of them have been in narcissistic relationships. What you sometimes would have got with that narcissistic person is what's known as narcissistic rage. Their expectations aren't being met. You're not seeing them as special, unique. You're not giving them what they want and things like that. When they got angry, it came out as an explosion sometimes. There might have been a little bit of silent treatment, but I'm going to look at that later on. It's a different type of anger. But you would have got explosions. You would have got rage. You would have got swearing. You would have got threats. You would have got maybe breaking things, slamming doors, things like that. What you're really looking at there is rage, okay? Not so much anger, but it's how it comes out. It's the rage. Explosive anger, people who explode, a lot of the time what they're trying to do is they're trying to intimidate. They're trying to make people back down, because this is the thing about anger. Anger is terrifying, okay? Anger scares us. Other people's anger scares us. Sometimes our own anger scares us because we don't know where it's going to take us. We don't know where it's going to lead us. Sometimes it makes things worse. And if you've been led to believe anger is a bad thing, again, it's like you almost have to always keep this kind of Buddhist, kind of Zen, peaceful, whatever. You're afraid to raise your voice. You're afraid to be passionate. Whereas I said earlier on, anger is perfectly normal. So the explosive anger, that's when it comes out as a rage. It can be very destructive. It can be very intimidating. And a lot of the time, it is aimed at getting people to back down, to frighten them. Sometimes it's automatic. It's unconscious. People talk about that red mist that comes over them. It's just how they learned to react to some kind of threat or something they don't like to feel, or something someone else is doing. But the intention with the explosive anger is to control the situation and to control others. And if you're in an environment or a situation with someone who is explosive, what happens over a period of time, if you fear their anger, you start to tread very carefully around them. You don't want to lift your head above the parapet. You don't want to do or say the wrong thing that's going to trigger their anger. Because a lot of the time we're led to believe that we are responsible for their anger. We are the ones that did it to them. We are the ones that gave it to them. When in reality, no, they're responsible for their own behavior, for their own actions. But whenever someone is being explosive and they're intimidating, it's, you'll get looks that could kill. You'll get threats. There'll be swearing. There'll be screaming. There's an aggressive stance. There can be an invasion of your territory, invasion of your space, people and they're right in your face like this, screaming at you, leaning over you, whatever. You're a short guy like me, they'll be towering over you, shouting down at you. There'll be an invasion of a lot of different stuff going on in order to get you to back down. I'm sorry, I thought it'd be over my hay fever by now, but I'm clearly not. So you'll have to bear with me if I'm coughing a bit. Explosive people as well, when they're angry, they hold you to account for their behavior. Many times have you heard something like, you made me do it, or you do this to me, okay? They hold you responsible. Now, you may have done something that has brought up some kind of anger in them, but you're not responsible for what they do with the anger. You're not responsible for how they behave. You're not responsible for them breaking things or swearing or screaming at you. Generally, what you find with people who intimidate through their anger, they're really just bullies. That's all they are. Again, people around them are treading carefully, okay? They're afraid to trigger them. Again, they've been led to believe that they are responsible for that person's anger and what they do. But another kind can be people who interrogate. Sometimes they don't necessarily explode, but they do still take on this kind of aggressive stance. They're demanding answers. Now, they're not just demanding an answer as such, but they're demanding the answer that they want to hear. Okay. It's like they want you to admit to something you don't even know that you've done, or they want you to admit to whatever happens to be in their head at that moment. They want you to see things their way. They kind of believe that they have some kind of power over you. They want you to be subservient and so on. So there's a lot of questions. But this is the thing about the questions that's just come to mind. They will ask a lot of questions in order to get you to say whatever it is they want to say. But what they don't want you to do is they don't want you to answer back, which is a strange thing. They don't want you to answer honestly. They don't want you to answer assertively. They don't want you to answer innocently. They don't want you to necessarily tell the truth. They just want to hear what they have decided you're guilty of. Anybody who has ever been in a relationship with someone where they were constantly accused of cheating. You were cheating because you were in the bathroom for 2 minutes. You must have been up to something. You're out shopping and somebody walks just in front of you, you're obviously cheating because you're thinking about them. You spend a lot of time trying to convince them that they're not, and they're not hearing it, because sometimes they'll even tell you they can see your thoughts, silly things like that. You're not giving them the answer that they want. And what you find is it goes on to other things. This person that you work with, or that person you used to hang around with, or this person who you might have mentioned in some brief anecdote 10 years ago. They want a specific answer that fits how they feel. And what you find is they behave as if they don't have to prove that you're guilty. Again, this is the interrogator. They don't have to prove that you're guilty. You have to prove that you're innocent. And you cannot do that. You cannot, I don't know, prove the contents of your head. You cannot prove what you were thinking at 8 o'clock this morning while you were eating your toast. That's the interrogator, okay? I hope I'm articulating that well. It's probably a poor example, but it is another form of bullying. It's keeping someone on their toes. It's keeping someone on eggshells around them, because they fear the barrage of questions. They fear having to over-explain and over-justify themselves for things that they don't even know anything about. So again, it's a form of control. Sometimes what you might find with those interrogator type, you're halfway through an answer and they just throw another question. It's like a machine gun fire of rapid fire questions, and you can't keep up with them. And because you can't keep up with them, they will use that as evidence that you're lying or something. So they would be exploders, okay? There are different kinds, but the explosive kind of anger is really a form of bullying. It's a form of getting others to comply. It's having others in fear of their triggers and such. But then there are imploders, okay? Whenever we implode with anger. Now, there's different ways of looking at this, and what I have found, and there is some research that I looked at one time, and it kind of made sense to me, because I've seen this. I've even seen this in myself. Whenever we feel angry, but we feel unable to express it or do anything about it, and it's not something that we can just maybe let go of because after a while it doesn't really matter, it's not a big deal. Either that, or it could be something that's ongoing and we're unable to do or say anything. We get that anger, it has nowhere to go. We turn it inwards and we start to ruminate, we start to analyze. We start to think about the things we wish we had said. We start to think about the things we should have said. We start to think about things that we hope is going to maybe put an end to this, make this go away, stop this. But the more we do that, the more we internalize and the more we ruminate, sometimes different things start to happen. Sometimes that anger can become very corrosive, and it tends to come out as resentment. And sometimes we will resent another person, a situation, a period in our history. Sometimes we will even resent ourselves. Other times, when we turn it inwards, it can become very dulled. But it still has to come out somehow. And what often happens is, and this was what I was looking at a few years ago that made sense to me, low mood and depression quite often is internalized anger. Okay, it just comes out as a low mood, it comes out as depression. There's a sense of helplessness, there's a sense of hopelessness over something that was really, really important to us, something that maybe we felt we couldn't fix, we couldn't change, we couldn't do anything about. So that is a form of imploding with the anger. What happens is, I say, people stuff the anger, they bottle it up and they hold it for a long time. And it can come out as I say, the low mood, the resentment, there can be insecurity, there can be low self-esteem. Sometimes there can even be shame. There's a lot of different things goes on. When we turn it inwards, we think we're not doing any harm. Maybe we think it's the bit. And to be fair, it could well be the best course of action for whatever it is we need to do, whatever it is we need to get through. It could be the best course of action to maybe suppress something. However, not in the long term. We still need to address it and deal with it at some point. When the suppression becomes our go-to, it's our default setting, then it's not so helpful, and it does leak out in those different areas of our lives, as I say, low mood, resentment, things like that. But then there are other people who, whenever they're imploding, now they don't fly into a rage as such, but what they do is they just start to whine a lot. They become a victim. They complain about everything. Everything in the world is so unfair. No one's ever had it as bad as them. And you're a horrible, nasty, mean person for not doing this or for saying the other thing. Sometimes it can be just a form of attention seeking when people just whine and complain about things. It can be a form of attention seeking. They might have felt mistreated. They might have felt neglected, whether they were or not. They might feel that way. And when they're doing that, they're really just trying to get some kind of attention from someone. Now, this is the thing, however, and this is very common with covert narcissism, because a lot of the grandiosity is turned inwards. It's not grandiose like you see with the overt narcissists. A lot of it's internalized, and a lot of their low mood and depression is no one is seeing them as amazing. No one gets them. They're misunderstood geniuses. They're the most generous, kind people in the world, and no one is getting that. So again, that can cause anger, that can cause rage. So you see a lot of passive aggression, see a lot of passive aggressive remarks whenever it comes out, but you also get that sense of victimhood. Okay. When they do find someone who maybe shows a bit of sympathy, shows a bit of empathy, shows a bit of compassion, it's the difference with it, with someone else who might be struggling, and it might take a while, but eventually, they start to see what a healthy relationship looks like, and different parts of them come out. They start to heal, if you will. The difference is with covert narcissism, whenever you show them the same thing, like the compassion and the care, what you find is they start to reinforce their own behavior. They start to do it more because they have found that they are now getting attention by doing this. So it's kind of like a feedback loop for them. Another form of the poor me, the victimized kind of anger, is they could do something and you call them out on it. And again, they start playing the victim. After all I've done for you, or what about my sore foot, or what, you're giving me a hard time. Don't you know the cat's not well? Whatever it is, they will turn it somewhere or another to make themselves the victim. And there is something wrong with you for being angry at the way you're being treated. If you will, it's like a form of, and I've talked about it recently, I talked about it last week there, a video went out. It's a form of reactive abuse, okay? They're pointing out your reaction to how they're behaving, to what they have done, to what they have said, okay? As if you're the bad person. And this can bring up a lot of guilt in people, which ties back to what I said earlier. It leads us to suppress sometimes our anger for how we're being treated. And over the long term, it's not so good. Those victim type people who wallow in their own victimhood, wear it like an identity, if you will. They do generally feel sorry for themselves, but the thing is, they want you and everyone else to feel sorry for them as well. And sometimes what you might find is when they don't get sympathy, that's when it becomes explosive. Just like even covert narcissists, they can be very passive aggressive and so on. So it's kind of under the radar, but they can also become very grandiose. They can become very vocal, very loud. They can fly into a rage just like everyone else can. Thing about the victimized person is, as I say, they can be very hard to deal with, because sometimes when we do start to give them attention, when we do start trying to help them, as I said, that reinforces their behavior. Something I have found useful, I'm not talking about therapy, talking about real life. What I have found useful when people do behave like that, rather than offer suggestions, rather than try to give a bit of advice, which you kind of learn they're not going to take. Instead, I'll just say, well, what do you think you need? What do you think you need to do? What do you think would be useful? Just give them their own work to do. Okay. So that would be the victim. And another form of the imploding anger would be the person who distances, and that could be things like the silent treatment. That could be the one-word answers. That could be the stonewalling and things like that. Sometimes what you might find with the distancer is they will behave in a way. It's almost like you ask them, "Is everything okay?" And they'll go, "Yep, I'm fine." So you have to guess what they've done, or rather, you have to guess what you've done. What they really want, they're showing a lot of signals. They're giving off a lot of signals. So it's not that they're just withdrawing to maybe gather their thoughts. They're giving off a lot of signals. What they want you to do is they want you to chase after them and try and figure out what it is. What has happened? What have I possibly done? It's the way of feeding off your energy, if you know what I mean. So they want you to chase them. They want you to ask questions. They want you to try and tease out of them what the problem is, okay? And then they'll try and have you to fix it. Again, it's another way of getting attention, just like the victimhood. If someone does follow me around, if someone does keep asking, if someone does try to do things to make me better, well, yeah, I'm getting attention. I'm getting some kind of validation. And sometimes, yeah, that can reinforce the behavior further on. Another thing I'm just thinking about the distance here, there is another aspect to them that's just occurred to me. That could be the person who is having a heated argument with you. The two of you might be, screaming away at each other, raised voices, whatever. But that's the person that will scream at you that they don't have a problem with anger. It's all you. So there's a lack of awareness there. Even though they might be intimidating, they might actually be explosive in that moment. It's not their problem. There's nothing wrong with them. It is clearly you. There is something wrong with you. Sometimes the distancer, what they'll do is they'll storm out of a room, they'll slam the door. And again, it's not that they're withdrawing. It's not that they're trying to calm down. It's not that they're doing anything other than for dramatic effect. You're either to follow them out, asking them, are they okay? Or you're to sit there for the rest of the evening pondering what you could do to try to make things better for them. There is another kind of anger, which is rarely talked about. And I mentioned passive aggression earlier on, but there is another kind of anger, and that is the person who just antagonizes. And they can antagonize with sarcasm. There could be unkind humor. There could be jokes with jags. There could be, even if you want to go as far as say it, some kind of maybe sadistic kind of humor. Doing and saying things to wind you up, to antagonize you. There is something going on with them, because it's not just a joke that they mention once, okay, and everyone has a little bit of a mild laugh. It is something they continually do. Okay. And this is often a sign that there is something going on with them, but they're just not capable of expressing it. They're maybe too afraid to express it. There could be anything going on with them. So what they do is, again, they might poke fun of, they might insult, they might do things like that, but it's usually done as a little bit of sarcastic humor. You find this a lot in maybe workplaces or places where there are rules and codes of conduct and boundaries and things like that. They will behave in a way that isn't openly aggressive. It might be done with a little wink and a nudge, things like that. I suppose another way of antagonizing as well could be excluding people. Okay, again, that's passive aggression. There's 3 of you or 4 of you in the group, and one person is talking to 2, leaving you out of it. They're not even acknowledging you in the room. Okay. If you were to do or say anything, well, they haven't done anything. They haven't insulted you. They haven't threatened you. All they were doing was talking to someone. But what you find is they're continually ignoring you. Again, if they're continually doing it, see, once once or twice, you might give it a, cut them a bit of slack or whatever. But when it happens repeatedly, you see the pattern of behavior and there is intent there. Okay. So there are the different kinds of anger, the explosions, there's the implosions and things like that. The different things that happen, the explosions can be very bullying, it can be very destructive. The implosions, again, they can be a bit more passive aggressive, but if we are the ones that are imploding sometimes, when we are doing it, the implosions can be quite detrimental. They'll impact a lot of things, our esteem, our confidence, our mood, things like that. It can make us sometimes quite bitter, quite resentful as well. So they are the different kinds of anger. Moving on to my next load of points. I'm going to look at some of the things that trigger our anger. Now, there's many different things. Sometimes it can be very low level. We just didn't get things the way we wanted. Things didn't work out the way we would have liked. That would be more disappointment. But if we're not regulating how we feel and recognizing that's disappointment, sometimes that can trigger an anger in us, depending on what it is. Of course, sometimes we could be being treated unfairly, but sometimes we will feel as if we were treated unfairly. But some of the things that fuel our anger can be feeling threatened. Okay, now that's either a threat to ourselves or to someone that we like, someone who's close to us. That can raise an anger in us. That raises our fight or flight, punch in the face or run for your life, our survival instincts. We get an adrenaline surge. We get an energy boost. We raise our voice and things like that because we're trying to fight off some kind of a threat. And that could be a threat to our safety. That could be a threat to our ego. That could be a threat to maybe something we're working on in work. And just as it's about to finish, someone else decides that they're going to take it and claim credit for it. Oh, hold on a minute. No, it's some kind of a threat. Okay. Whenever we feel threatened, that can raise our anger. Okay. Sometimes it can be feeling powerless. I mentioned earlier on, whenever we internalize it, the low mood, sometimes it can be feeling a mixture of being helpless and hopeless. Sometimes you might be in a situation, again, going back to things like the reactive abuse, how manipulative people will focus on your behavior and focus on your reactions to things. No matter what you do is getting you nowhere. You can't change anything. You can't fix anything. You can't bring about any kind of positive change. You could be feeling helpless. Okay, there could be that other person could be behaving any way they want, and they're just far too slippery. You just cannot get them. You can't pin them down. You can't get them to take responsibility. You can't pin them down to a particular topic or subject because it goes all over the place. No matter what you do, they keep behaving the same way and then blaming you for not liking it. So there could be a sense of powerlessness, and that can bring up our anger. Sometimes the anger can be misdirected. We will be irritable with other people. You see the neighbor's cat in your driveway, you throw a stone on it and tell it where to go. It's got nothing to do with the cat, nor is that going to fix anything. But it can become displaced. So we become very irritable. And sometimes what you find whenever we are feeling helpless, sometimes whenever the anger is being displaced, and we're irritable, it's even just the slightest things, the things that normally don't bother us, the things that aren't an issue whatsoever. The neighbor's dog barks all the time. You don't even notice it. It's only a dog. But one time it barks and it really has you on edge. Or even someone you're watching on television, someone you wouldn't give the time of day to, you're not normally watching, but you find they're on TV and you just want to scream at the TV or something. So you can find it sometimes whenever we're feeling powerless, that maybe being treated unfairly and there isn't much we can do. Sometimes that is going to bring up an anger in us, but it can be displaced. Okay. We can't direct the anger where we would like to, especially if someone has convinced us or led us to believe we're bad for feeling angry. Other things that can bring up our anger could be an invasion of our privacy. an invasion of our boundaries, again, being treated unfairly, things like that. Someone sharing our private conversations, our private secrets, things that we might have said in confidence. Suddenly we find out it's being spread around the town or put on social media or something like that. So yeah, an invasion of personal boundaries, invasion of our privacy. These things can raise anger in us as well. That being said, there can also be like even just apply a blow to maybe our pride, our ego, things like that, our self-esteem. Going back to what I was saying earlier on about the person who likes to antagonize with the sarcasm and so on. We could be feeling okay. We're talking to a group of friends, whatever, and they suddenly appear and start telling this really unkind story or false story or say something that really insults us. And then it hurts because all our buddies are laughing, okay? They see it as a joke, a harmless joke, because that's how it's being presented. But what they don't know is this person is continually doing this. Then we start to look unreasonable for not laughing. We start to look unreasonable for getting angry and things like that, which is, again, going to have us internalize it, and we're going to end up feeling worse. Another thing that can trigger our anger is feeling devalued, disrespected, um, not being listened to, being ignored, no matter what you do, no matter what you say. It's not even that someone is saying no to you. It's just that they're looking at you and maybe shrugging their shoulders, or they're telling you they don't care, or whatever it is. Um, you've been through something absolutely horrible and they're just dismissive of it. So devaluation and disrespect can also bring up our anger. Even losing out on something really important. Again, going back to the disappointment, we can feel disappointed, but we could have tried our damnedest to do something. And no matter what our best efforts were, we failed. Now, we can be angry. We're not necessarily being angry at a person or a situation. Sometimes might be at ourselves. But that is still going to bring up an anger in us, at feeling something that was really, really important to us, something that we've maybe put our heart and soul into. Um, Other things, goals not being met, expectations not being reached, things like that. Sometimes disagreement can make us angry. Depends on the nature of the disagreement. I would say we can feel passionate about something. We can debate something passionately. It's not quite the same as anger, but sometimes we can get angry, especially if we feel we're not being heard or we're not being listened to, or we're just being talked over or we're being ignored. And in the 21st century on social media, the biggest thing that seems to make everybody angry is someone else with a different opinion or a different belief. Okay, like there's no room for nuance, there's no room for difference and things like that. So yeah, somebody who maybe does something or believes something that maybe goes against your own values or your own beliefs or whatever, sometimes that can bring up an anger. And as difference is with social media, you just see the worst of that come out sometimes, just unrestricted kind of, shall we say, unfiltered vitriol sometimes. But yeah, we're going to feel angry for different reasons, and we're going to feel it in different degrees. Understanding what the anger is, such as a goal not met, or a blow to our pride, our esteem, feeling devalued, feeling humiliated, things like that. When we get a sense of what it is that is actually driving the anger or fueling the anger, sometimes we're in a better place to do something with it. I mentioned reactive abuse earlier. Last week I put out a video and I was talking about the long-term impact of being in a situation where anytime you tried to assert a boundary or something, it was quickly shut down and you were accused of being the abusive person. I was looking at the long-term impact of that. And I'd asked if anyone was interested in learning about how to handle this. Quite a few people said, yeah, they would like tactics. So I am going to do that. But before I do that, tomorrow there's a video coming out and I'm looking at the reasons and the motivations behind the reactive abuse and how and why it works, okay, for the narcissistic person. And the reason to bring that up is because over a long period of time, if we were led to believe that our anger is bad, then of course we're not going to assert ourselves. Raising our voice means we're being aggressive and cruel and horrible. Then of course we're going to look at our feet and mumble. This is something that takes place over a long period of time. That's how manipulative people get you to back down. They make you afraid to stand up for yourself. So it's how do we do it? I'm going to give you this. You might want to watch this back, or you might have a pen and paper, because these are just some notes I scribbled down. Let's see, where are we? Where are we? These, if you want to call them, these are rules of engagement. Here's how you engage with people, regardless of what's going on, regardless of what the conversation is. Even if the other person isn't sticking to these, you do, okay? This makes difficult conversations a little bit more easier, but you have to have a sense of what's going on with you, what has been triggered in you in the first place. If it is a case like reactive abuse, chances are that person has spent a long time studying your triggers. They know what buttons to push. They know what to do. So you need to keep a good sense of yourself. So when you are maybe trying to express your anger, the first thing you do is you tell others what you think and feel. And you be honest. Don't go all over the place. Don't talk about what they did back in 1973, whatever it was. You be honest and to the point. When you do that, I feel like this. Now, what the danger is, you're actually giving them more triggers, because they're thinking, oh, right, so when I do that, he feels like that. I'm going to do that more often. You're making it clear, okay? You're just trying to be clear. You're being concise and you're being honest, because if they continue with it, they know exactly what they're doing. And you know that they know exactly what they're doing. And that's something you can remind them of. You can see through it. You know what they're doing, okay? So you're remaining in control. So what you do as well is you stick to one issue at a time. The other person might be bringing in things from 10 years ago, 15 years ago, last Tuesday, whatever it is. The temptation is that we're going to try and explain all that and whatever. No, we stick to the one point at a time. This is what we're talking about. This is where we are. We're not being distracted by sideshows. This is what we're actually addressing. When we're doing that, we have to be aware of ourselves, because especially if this is a long-term situation and there has been a lot of stuff going on, chances are we're going to be tempted to start bringing in every single bad thing that they have done as well. Stick to the one issue, the one thing at a time, okay? If possible, do it when you're sitting down. Sometimes when we're sitting down, we feel a little bit more relaxed. Now, we might still feel agitated, but when we're up, chances are we're going to be walking about the place, we're going to be moving about, we might even be in and out of each other's space or whatever. If you can, stay seated. The other thing, and this is very difficult to do when you're angry, and this is something that really need a bit of practice with, especially when tensions are high, is to listen, okay? Listen to what the other person is saying. You listen for different reasons. You listen because, first of all, they might have picked up on something that you weren't aware of. They might know a piece of the story that you don't. They might be able to offer a different perspective on something. But also when you listen, you'll get to see what's going on with them. Are they trying to resolve something, or are they trying to steer it away in a different direction? Again, bringing up stuff from the past. But one way or another, listen to what they're saying. Make sure they listen to you as well. Again, be clear, be concise. This is a difficult one in a toxic relationship, because often we focus on the behavior that's having a huge impact on us. It brings up our anger, for instance. It's a difficult one to do, but again, with practice, you try to focus on the behavior you want. You focus on the outcome that you want, rather than what you have to go through to get it, or rather than everything that's happened up until now. Certainly let these things inform you, but you focus on the outcome that you would prefer, the outcome that you want. It is important to make eye contact. I would like to say, whenever you're making eye contact, there's a connection there. It's trying to keep that balance between keeping eye contact and glaring at them. It's trying to find that balance. Okay, so do make the eye contact, but don't stare at them, don't glare at them, even if they're doing that to you. Okay, do make the eye contact, but try not to make it too confrontational. If possible, stay calm and relaxed. It's not easy when tensions are high, and as someone once said to me many years ago, it's very hard to shake hands with a clenched fist. But do try and stay calm. Do try and stay relaxed. Try to stay factual and focus on the outcome. As I say, the outcome that you would prefer. Something, if you're arguing with a narcissistic person, again, they're going to tie you up in knots. But again, try to stay calm. Try not, if you feel your frustration rising and this isn't going anywhere, maybe it is about taking a break or something, catching your breath for 5 minutes, whatever, then come back to it. When people are in a rage, when people are having temper tantrums, remember, as I said earlier, what they'll do is they'll blame you. They'll say it was all you. You made me do that. Difference is, even if you're angry, you take responsibility for your words and your actions. You own them, okay? They're yours. You take responsibility for your own actions and for your own words. No matter what they do to try and twist them, by the way, because you know what you said and how you said it and why you said it, okay? You don't need to be gaslit into believing you're just turned into the Hulk or something. And if you need to, as I say, you take whatever time out that you need. Lastly, this is difficult, but this, again, especially if tensions are high, this is difficult, but this is something that years ago I used to work in mediation. I used to work where there was conflict. I would have worked in mediation. And one of the things that I learned to do when you're mediating disputes is you look for solutions, not victories. Because this is the thing, narcissistic people don't get that. It's usually all about dominance and control and who gets the last word and wins and so on. Getting the last word doesn't mean you're right. And getting the last word doesn't mean that you've won. Sometimes, going back to earlier on, the explosive kind of rage, sometimes getting the last word, all it means is you got the other person to shut up and back down. And that's not the same thing. It can be hard when tensions are high, but again, if you focus on things like solutions, the behavior you want, the outcome you want, rather than a victory. If you're arguing with a narcissistic person and you're thinking about a victory, that ain't going to happen. They will, they'll do all manner of things. They will rewrite reality. They will paint themselves blue and howl at the moon. Whatever it is, anything at all. They'll roll about the floor in front of you pretending they're having a heart attack. Anything at all to avoid what they think is going to be a loss. You're not thinking of losing. You're not thinking about winning either. You're thinking about solutions, okay? So there are some things I hope you find helpful, things to avoid doing, and it's very difficult, but so it is something to get into the habit of practicing. But just be mindful, things that are unhelpful is making fun of people and being sarcastic. That generally antagonizes. Humor can be useful sometimes because it can diffuse a situation, but it's a very careful. We need to be very careful how we're doing it. We don't want to be sarcastic and we don't want to antagonize anyone. So not making fun of people. Standing up and shouting, screaming, things like that. People generally don't listen to that. All they see is the behavior, okay? Pulling funny faces and things like that generally doesn't work either. Again, kinds of antagonizes people. Attacking a personality, the type of person they are. You're just a horrible person. You're an addict. You're a narcissist. You're a fill in the blank, whatever it is. Attacking personalities. That ain't going to get you anywhere. Neither will calling people names and insulting them. Focusing on the past. This is a difficult one because sometimes it could be the past that we're talking about. Sometimes it could be the past and how that's playing a part in the here and now. But trying not to focus in the past, as I said a moment ago, dragging up things from last week, 10 years ago, whatever it was, things that are still unresolved, that are still playing a part in the here and now, because again, the argument's just going to go all over the place. Nothing's going to be fixed. When I said earlier on about listening, the important part of listening is not interrupting. Even if they are talking absolute bollocks, just let them talk. When they're finished, then you speak. Okay? If they try to talk over you, remind them they've had their chance, and this is now your opportunity to respond. If they keep on talking over you, tell them the conversation's over. We're going to resolve this later. Whatever it is. You don't let them dominate the conversation. And even when they start getting angry, again, maybe it's about saying, okay, we're going to cool this. We're going to come back and talk about this in 20 minutes, half an hour, whatever it is. So that is anger. I hope there was something useful in it for you. What fuels it, thinking of it as a secondary emotion, some of the things that can bring it up, the different ways it comes out. There's explosive, there's implosive, things like that, and the different kind of little rage kind of behaviors, as well as the passive aggressive kind of behaviors. There is much more I could talk about this, but I think this live stream would probably last about 3 weeks, and don't think any of us want me to do that. Couldn't be talking for 3 weeks. I don't think I could talk for another 10 minutes, to be fair. But some ideas as well on how to manage conflict, especially when we are feeling angry. Finding different ways to de-escalate. Now, some things, I've talked about this before, and I'm going to talk you through it again. This is very useful. When we are feeling angry, we do get that adrenaline surge. We get a lot of anger, a lot of energy. And some people find it useful to do things like exercise, go to the gym. Some people go for a brisk walk, stuff like that, to try and burn the energy off. There's an exercise that's very good at getting rid of passive energy. And all you do is stand with your feet apart and lean your hands up against the wall. And you push. I was just going to say it's not a spectator sport, so go somewhere quiet. You might look a bit odd. You push from the soles of your feet the whole way up through your legs, up into your stomach, up into your shoulders, and you press into the wall. Whole way up through your body. Don't push so hard that you're hurting yourself or you break the wall or something, but you push the whole way up through your body. If you need to change position, get comfortable, that's entirely up to you. But you push as hard as you want, as soft as you want, whatever it is you feel you need to do. And as you're pushing, as you're pressing, you try to visualize whatever it is you're feeling. It could be anxiety, it could be fear, it could be anger, it could be rage, whatever it is. You try to imagine that traveling along your arms and just dissipating harmlessly into the wall, okay? And as you're doing that, don't force anything, but try to pay attention. Just notice anything different you begin to feel physically. Sometimes you might see a reduction in the energy. You might see things like knots in your stomach starting to loosen, whatever it is. It's a very passive way of getting rid of the unwanted energy. After you've done that, you might find that difficult conversation a bit easier to have. You might find your temper easier to control. That exercise is used for so many things. Anxiety, people do it before going out to give presentations, they do it before giving speeches, do it before difficult conversations, little things like that. And it's something to practice, okay? If you find it useful. And in future live streams, if anyone tonight's watching is on another live stream, I would be very interested to know if anyone found that useful, okay? So let's go back to the beginning, and I'm going to have a look for some questions. So let's have a look. By the way, I'm a little bit later tonight, and I'm just wondering, how is everybody with it just being a half hour later? Because normally it's at 8. This evening I thought I would do 8:30. So be interested if anyone found that okay. Um, Let me see. Oh, and by the way, questions are easier for me to find if I see question marks. Let me see where we go. Even just trying to. Hello, on my way. The antagonizer. Yeah, antagonizers are very passive aggressive. Everything they do is almost like, to say that it's a joke. You've got no sense of humor or whatever. Yeah, it's really, they have something to say a lot of the time, but they don't have the confidence to actually say it. So they say it disguised as a harmless jab. Okay. So let me see. Where we go? Hello, Ellie. Hello, on my way. Hello, Creo. Cryo. I never know if I pronounce things wrong. Right, okay. On my way says this talk is so helpful. That's good. I'm glad you find it helpful. Hope you find something useful in that. Hello, Sixth Sense Amelia. Again, if there's any question marks, it's going to be easier for me to find. Sharon says, yes, they study your triggers. Sharon, yes, they absolutely do. Manipulative people, especially in the early parts of a relationship, whether it's a romantic one, whether it's a working one, whatever, they're trying to find out what they can. And they are studying you. They're studying your triggers. They're studying what buttons to push. The example I use, it's one I'm using in a video. If they were to find out that you were maybe close to your brother, you know, you and your brother have a good relationship, you and your brother are very close. If they were to find that out and they wanted to antagonize you, what you might find is later down the road, they start to make those little antagonistic quips about your brother, making fun of your brother, having a dig at your brother, criticizing and insulting your brother. Probably not when he's there, but whenever you're alone. And that's a way of getting a rise out of you. That's what they have learned is a trigger in you. Okay. So, and some are very good at studying as well. I remember once somebody did have a dig at me for something I'd told them about 15 years ago. Wow, they've held it for all that time. Wow. Now, where we get to. Yeah, hard to shake hands with a clenched fist. That was another therapist that actually said that. I was at a training event and actually he was talking about anger. He was describing anger. And that's how he talked about conflict resolution. That's very hard to do when both parties are tension, passions are so high. Yeah. You see, need you to continue providing your supply of various angles, analyzing narcissistic anger controlling types, always practical, useful, and excellent. D. Lee, if I've pronounced that right, you're welcome. I'm glad you find it helpful. That's why I do this. Maximus is bipolar a common trait of the narcissist? Not that I'm aware of. Not to say that narcissistic people can't have a bipolar disorder, or indeed that people with a bipolar disorder don't have traits of narcissism. But I don't know if there's an actual correlation between the two, that they do always coexist together. Where do we get to? He says, destroyed my life. Shouldn't be mad at that. Mad for that, though. Think about what it's saying. It's not that we don't get angry. Anger is a normal emotion. It's a normal human experience. We get angry for many, many different reasons. And we're going to get angry to different degrees as well. Sometimes we'll get angry just in a moment, just because, I don't know, we knocked our toe off the door or something and it was really sore. So we're going to be angry at the door for a moment. But that passes very quickly. And we're going to be angry to different degrees. We're not always going to go into a rage. But if you are angry, when we do feel angry about something, we think of that energy, it can be very destructive. Ideally, we want to use that energy in a very constructive way. And the example I always use, and there's a whole generation of people don't know who I'm talking about. I need a new, more modern example. The example I often use is Bob Geldof, who during the 1980s got very angry, and we ended up with Live Aid. Okay, so that was someone who was angry about seeing people in the 20th century starving, and he used that anger constructively, raised a lot of money, and so on. So we can still feel anger. It's not that we shouldn't feel anger. It's about what we do with it. And it's about trying to be constructive. Anger can be a positive force for change. It doesn't always have to be aggressive. We confuse anger with, as I said earlier on, things like rage, temper tantrums, aggression, things like that. Not necessarily. Max Smith said, do narcissists attack those who are positive supply? Narcissistic people generally turn on everybody eventually. You can't be a positive supply 24 hours a day. There are going to be times when you're tired, you're not well, you have other priorities, you're too busy. And in those moments, they're going to feel that you're taking something away from them, you're denying them something or whatever. So they might attack, and it might be anger, it might be silent treatment, it could be any number of things. One supply is never really enough for a narcissistic person. They like to have multiple supplies. So where I get to, Sixth Sense Amelia says, never wrestle with a pig. You get dirty and the pig likes it. That's good. I like that. That's another one I'm going to steal. Claim I made it up. I like that one. Thank you for that one, Sixth Sense Amelia. Let me see. Eye contact is difficult. Eye contact can be difficult. Eye contact can be difficult for a lot of people for a variety of reasons. When you're making eye contact, as I said earlier on, it's trying to find that balance. You're not glaring at them, you're not staring at them, but nor are you looking at your feet. There is a rule, and I can't remember what it was. It was something you'll probably find online if you do a search. What I find when I'm talking with people, particularly if it's in a professional setting, like if I'm giving a talk somewhere or if it's in therapy or whatever, I do look at people because I have to. And I make eye contact, but I might make eye contact just while I'm saying a sentence. My eyes might just move slightly away for just a second or two, and then I'll look at them as they're answering to show that I'm listening. You find you probably do these things naturally in conversations. Your eyes are going to wander, just like your mind wanders sometimes. Your eyes are going to wander, but they go back to the person. What you're not doing is you're not staring at them. And I think that's the difficulty, is we're staring or we fear that we're staring at them. Sometimes just a glance at the eyes for 2 or 3 seconds and then back to whatever it is you're doing. Whatever it is, okay? And it is also something to maybe practice. Practice with people that you feel comfortable with, okay? Where do we get to? Ellie Wynn says, very helpful analysis of anger. Good. Glad to hear that. Yeah. Anger is very, very misunderstood. There's a really good line in it was one of the Marvel movies, one of the Avenger movies. Can't remember which one, but it's the one that most of them do, but it's the one that had the Hulk in it. And Captain America says to him, now would be a good time for you to get angry. And Dr. Banner answered him, I'm always angry. And I thought that was a really good line to show that we can feel anger, and it's what we do with it, because the Hulk is supposed to be someone that turns into a big, he turns into a big monster every time he's angry. If that were the case, you'd be turning into a monster about 6 or 7 times a day. But just that line, that's the secret, that I'm always angry. To be able to be aware of it, and it's not that it's being suppressed, it's not that it's being, ignored or whatever, but there's something in being able to manage that, manage the things that we don't like, manage the things that bring up these feelings in us, those feelings of disappointment, those feelings of rejection, things like that, finding different ways to manage those things and being able to deal with them much more appropriately. Okay, so where did we get to? Okay, just jump. Okay. Let me see. Michael Skinner says, if someone is angry, they should reflect on why they are angry. Yeah. If someone is angry, yeah. When we are angry, yeah. What is it's fueling it? What is it's driving it? Because sometimes there can be a real legitimate kind of thing going on, whatever it is, whether that's a threat, whether that's whatever it is. When we get a sense of what it is, as I keep on saying, it's easier to deal with. We know what the actual issue is. And we can articulate it better. We can manage it a lot better. Sometimes I have to do this myself. Sometimes I get angry. Even Freud, the dog, and he's climbing all over the place and he's jumping all over the place. And sometimes I leave the room and he's whimpering, and it really drives me insane. And it's really irritating me. But he's doing it because it's his walk time and I haven't taken him out yet. He doesn't understand I need the bathroom before I go. He goes to the bathroom when he's out, It's little things like that. It's yeah, we get aware of what it is fueling these things in us. So where do we get to? Avi says, thank you for the live stream, very helpful. Welcome. Oh, the pig quote is by George Bernard Shaw. You borrowed it too. Well, in that case, I can't claim it because people will know it was George Bernard Shaw. Shame that, because it's a good one. Sounds like one of mine. Where did we get to? Because I'm coming towards the end. We're coming up to 9:30. Dollars Mom. Thank you, Darren. I'll have to catch up when you repost. Sorry, I missed most of it. That's okay. It's good that you're here now. Glad to have you. So yeah, I asked earlier on about the 8:30 time instead of the 8 o'clock. The reason why I was thinking that was I noticed that when I started 8, most people tend to come on about 8:30 and they've missed most of what I'm talking about. So I'm guessing that time might be a little bit easier. I'm aware that a lot of people are not necessarily watching me from the UK, so there's different time zones as well. That could be something to do with it. So tomorrow, as I say, I'm putting out another video again looking at reactive abuse, but I'm looking at the motivations behind it. There's a lot of different motivations, a lot of different reasons. Sometimes it's out of their own boredom. Sometimes there is a specific agenda. So I'm looking at that, things to watch out for if you feel you're being provoked. Hopefully on Wednesday, because I'm trying to increase my videos, but hopefully on Wednesday, if not, definitely next week. I'm going to be looking at how to handle people who deliberately provoke you, trying to get some kind of response. And so until next time, I hope that you found that useful. And where do we get to? Any more questions? Just a quick one before I go. Oh, Carl says, nice to see you live. Oh, you're welcome, Carl. What is IED? I have no idea. That's not a term I've... It sounds like they're initials for something, but I'm not quite sure what they're. Intermittent explosive disorder. Intermittent explosive disorder. Now, there's one I haven't come across. Might have to have a look at that. Sometimes explosive rage, you will find explosive rage in things like narcissism, as I said, narcissistic rage. Sometimes you will find it with sadistic people, explosive sadism. That's where they control and dominate through rage and explosions of outrage and so on. The actual intermittent explosive disorder be interesting, because especially that word intermittent. So I might have a look at that. But in the meantime, Darren is describing is you're activating your body from gripping the floor with your toes, locking your knees, lying your spine. Never heard of expelling anger. You're not getting rid of the anger, you're getting rid of the energy that comes with the anger. And it's a very passive way of doing it. As I say, some people do it by going for brisk walks, some people do it by going to the gym, doing star jumps, whatever. They try to do some kind of physical activity to try to get rid of the physical side of what they're feeling. Because without the physical side, sometimes it's easier to navigate what to do next. You can think about it in a more sort of level-headed way. So, again, thanks for joining me, everyone. It was nice to, I was going to say nice to see you all again. All I see is me. So yeah, as I say, video out tomorrow. Hopefully I'm going to try and get one out on Wednesday as well. And I will be back next Sunday evening. Until then, everybody look after yourselves and take care. Bye.